This is the breakdown of episode 5 of Kenobi, so let's get straight into it. The episode begins with a shot from Coruscant with Anakin and Obi Wan engaging in a little sparring session. This scene is a flashback to during the time of the Attack of the Clones or slightly before the events of that movie. And we know this because Anakin still has his padawan braids and Obi Wan still has his Jesus look. We cut to Darth Vader aboard the Devastator when the captain of the Devastator informs him that the third sister has arrived. The Devastator is of course Vader's own flagship and the very same one he used to hunt down Princess Leia. Vader promotes the third sister to the position of the Grand Inquisitor, while on Jabiim we find a familiar face. Haja, first introduced in episode 2 as a swindler, returns yet again. And we get another curious wall with some really interesting writings. On the wall, we can see a few common Jedi sayings such as "there is no death," a piece of the Jedi Code which when fully written reads "there is no death, there is only the Force." We also see "may the Force be with you" written twice, and of course the light will fade but is never forgotten as Obi-Wan reads out loud.
The light will fade, but is never forgotten.
We also get a few Jedi names. Below we see Roganda Ismarin, a Jedi from Legends whose name we first saw in episode 3. We also see Corwin Shelvey. Corwin Shelvey was a Jedi Knight during the era of the Republic and eventually joined the Rebel Alliance and would go on to join Luke's Jedi Order, at least in Legends. We also see what I think is the name Siberius. Now I can't quite make out the first letter, but I suspect it might be an S. If that is the case, then it would be a reference to Darth Siberius, a Sith who was frozen in carbonite in Legends, but not entirely sure about this one though. There are a few other writings on this wall, but I can't quite seem to make them out, so if you know a few that I missed, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. Kenobi looks over several different lightsabers and Jedi clothing, both left over by Jedi who managed to get new identities giving up their Jedi pass. The team figures out that the Empire has tracked them and that they are about to be attacked by Vader. Kenobi says,
"He'll attack next. He hasn't the patience for a siege."
How do you know?
which really just reflects that he is starting to react to Vader less out of fear and relying on what he knows about Anakin, his former Padawan. Kenobi then begins to inspire everyone to fight the Empire, laying out a plan. A small moment that lets the audience know that Kenobi is starting to reclaim his former self, first as a Jedi in episode 4 and now as a general in episode 5. The Empire tries to blow down the Rebel doors with a massive cannon, using what looks to be a massive scaled up version of the E-Web heavy repeating blaster, except this one uses individual shells and packs a much bigger punch. We cut back to the Rebels and the group realizes that they cannot get the door open unless they crawl through the vents, which Leia volunteers to do so, and Kenobi immediately trusts Leia to complete the mission, showing a lot of growth and a greater willingness to trust others since the beginning of the show. Kenobi uses his holo communicator to watch a message from Bail Organa. The holopad communicator or holopad is a piece of device extremely common during the Clone Wars, serving as a handheld device to transmit and receive holograms. Senator Organa informs Kenobi that he is worried about the situation and that if he does not hear from them soon, he will assume that Vader knows the truth about the twins, which really just raises the stakes for the finale as a bit of a race against time. Obi-Wan attempts to negotiate with the third sister and seems to reach out with the Force, perhaps trying to use a mind trick or Force persuasion. In the conversation between the two, we learn more about Reva's origins, confirming that she was one of the younglings that survived Order 66, and morbidly one of the younglings that survived an encounter with Anakin. And this adds a whole lot more dimension and context to why Reva acts the way she does, where her hatred and anger is coming from, which also echoes where Obi-Wan's guilt is coming from. The Empire breaks down the door and Kenobi unleashes a massive force push, and if you pay close attention you'll notice that not only was Reva knocked back, but a few other stormtroopers as well. And as the troopers move in, the troopers that were hit by the force push don't get up, really just a testimony to how powerful Kenobi is. Perhaps also a reference to Kenobi's force abilities in Battlefront 2, one of them being a mighty force push that can one-shot droids. Leia tries to fix the door, fiddling with all the wires, reminding me very much of how Grogu tried to fix Mando's ship, as he was the only one small enough to fit through the vent as well.
He said it was a red breaker!
Huh? No, the red one.
In the ensuing battle, Tala gets shot and sacrifices herself by triggering a thermal detonator. We cut back to a training session, and some of the moves really invoke the memory of their battle on Mustafar many years later, with both of them using the same spinny moves during this training session. Really just foreshadowing what is to come and how Obi-Wan will outwit Vader once again. Leia removes a restraining bolt on Lola. Restraining bolts were first introduced in A New Hope and used to keep droids in check. Kenobi attempts to manipulate Reva into baiting Vader, which he successfully does. By letting Reva think she has captured Kenobi, Vader tells the troops to stand down instead of continuing the assault. Had Vader allowed the troops to continue their assault, they would have probably captured all the rebels. But because Vader is so eager to win this battle by himself, he tells them to stand down, thereby buying the rebels enough time to make their escape. Just a really clever moment of Kenobi using his knowledge of his former Padawan to gain an advantage.
Your need for victory, Anakin, it blinds you.
Vader storms through the hideout and manages to stop the ship from leaving using the Force. And this really gave off some Starkiller vibes, who also stopped ships from leaving through the Force. Then Vader proceeds to rip the ship apart, really demonstrating how much anger is within the man, only to reveal no one inside, and the real ship with the rebels sneakily escaping in the background, leaving Vader staring from a distance, much like how the Millennium Falcon managed to escape during Empire Strikes Back, also with Vader staring from a distance. Reva tries to sneak up on Vader, but Vader just puts on a masterclass and absolutely schools her in this fight. The duel ends with Reva getting stabbed, giving us more flashbacks with Anakin killing younglings. I mean, Anakin killing kids, isn't that just the best of? The Grand Inquisitor makes a return and says,
Revenge does wonders for the will to live, don't you think?
Somewhat foreshadowing Reva's survival at the end of the episode and how the Sith continue to endure after being cut down, living off the need for revenge. Reva then learns about the truth and the secret twin, so we can expect to see her on Tatooine next episode. Also mentioned in the credits is Corran Horn. Corran is of course a Jedi in Legends trained by Luke Skywalker and was first introduced back in episode 2, with him and his mother seeking refuge. So it's nice to see him back here again in this episode. Not entirely sure where he is, but he's in the episode somewhere. And judging by how the episode ended, I am guessing he lives, potentially setting up the possibility of another live action return. Anyways, that's all for this video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. I am the Lost Acolyte,
and I have spoken.